Welcome to Spaghetti Launchers, the world-building podcast where we throw spaghetti at the wall and it is up to you what sticks. I'm Kyle.
I'm Ethan. Today's episode is all about swords, sabers, and other slashing and stabby things.
If you stab someone, you can stab with a sword. But I think swords
You
are
absolutely can stab with a
It's
sword.
normally slashing. Stabbing, you turn into... This is the types of swords. Because if
There
you have
are
a
lots of
rapier,
different
you would
types
stab.
there. You got
but
there.
But you know...
You got there.
Yeah, there are lots of different types of
Yeah.
swords. You have the genres, the categories, the sub-swords, the named swords, the famous swords.
Throughout history. Your Excaliburs, Masamune, Muramasa, Joyous, Durandal.
Did you say Excalibur?
God, I hope so.
I think you said it at the top, but I can't remember.
Excalibur.
Yeah, what's that again? Just for the record, Excalibur, the most famous probably. There's
Of all the mythological swords, but then
it's real. I've seen it. And then we have all the more fictional ones that we
Did
find.
you find it in a rock in your backyard?
No. We have all the fictional ones where you can have like lightsaber,
Kyle.
iconic. What?
Are you our hidden king?
I can't talk about it. I don't want to talk about work. Let's move on. All right, but then we have lightsabers. Those are iconic for so many reasons.
I think those are probably the most famous fictional
sword. I mean, so much that they've actually just tried to make it in real life.
Yep.
We've talked about them here a lot, but the shard blades from Stormlight Archives are fantastic because they're also a really good plot device and they work really well as a weapon. They're very epic and interesting, but they're such a good piece of world building that add a lot to the plot and become huge plot devices at multiple points in that story. So those are really cool.
Narsil, the Lord of the Rings is full of them.
The Lord of the Rings does a good job of
Sting,
they do the
Glamoring.
classic of you got to name your sword.
Yeah.
And Sting has magic. And like
Narsil has magic too.
It's less obvious.
But in the soft magic of Tolkien, it definitely still has magic.
Yeah. I mean, if the blade that was broken, if they didn't fix it, he couldn't have gotten the army of the undead back. If he didn't fix it, if that elvish smith didn't fix it.
Yeah.
So naming swords, pretty awesome.
I love a good named sword.
What's the famous one in D&D? The paladin skip.
The Holy Avenger.
Yeah, Holy Avenger.
Yeah.
Holy Avenger's good. You have the Master Sword from Zelda.
Yeah.
You've got
the Buster Sword from Final Fantasy VII. You've got
Halo has a very cool energy sword that you hold with a handle that is horizontal, not vertical.
I remember seeing
I'm a big fan of that. I thought about trying to make something with a horizontal handle as my idea. I didn't do that today.
So that is actually based off of so there are two weapons that might have been based off of. One is called a Katar, which is like a punching knife. And the other one, there's a sword called the Pasa sword, which is a straight blade built into a gauntlet that was wielded in India.
I appreciate how ready you were with that information. Did you look into a lot of swords today?
So Kyle, tell me about your...
Well, but then also just shout out to the Assassin's Creed knife that you kind of just teased
hidden
what about
blade.
the hidden blade is like
kind of more of a dagger.
But what if it was a full sword?
Yeah.
Which is kind of like what they do in Mass Effect with the Omni Blade, where it kind of comes out of your Omni tool, and you just get like a huge, the blade is made of I don't know what.
Hard light.
Yeah. Hard light is a cool thing to make swords out of.
It's immediately sci-fi. Marvel Comics uses it a lot. I also like a lot of these have been very heavy on the magic. There are some great swords in fiction though that are just even slightly fantastical, but more mundane, like the Valyrian steel swords in Game of Thrones, which are based really just off of Damascus steel. Because when Damascus steel was first invented, it was so far superior to other forms of steel that it did feel almost magical. The dragon glass is just obsidian volcanic glass forged out of dragonfire. We'll come back to that later. I also love in the anime Rurouni Kenshin, this is Kyle. I just kind of Kyle windmilled his face there a little bit.
I was like, "What the fuck are we talking about? I've never heard of this."
We're talking about the anime Rurouni Kenshin, which
I've heard of it.
The main character is a retired samurai who was famous for his skill and brutality and who has one of the better nicknames in fiction. His name was Batosai the Manslayer, which I thought was spectacular.
Is that feels so normal?
I still think I like the phrase manslayer. I think it's spectacular.
How do you feel about the name Doomslayer?
What the fuck is a Doom?
Well, the Doomslayer is the main character in Doom, the game.
I've never actually played that.
I mean, it's not your cup of tea,
Yeah, no,
but
I don't
it's just
do
it's kind of a cool
FPSs.
nickname.
Yeah, no, it is. But Manslayer's like, oh, it's vulnerable. I'm a man. I
But
could get
Kinslayer, Kingslayer. I feel like Manslayer seems like a femme
just
fatale.
Let me have fun.
It should be a femme fatale,
Can you
and it's annoying
just
that it's not.
Can you just let me? He wields a katana that very famously, the front is not sharpened. It's dull, but the back edge is sharpened. So that in case he still needs to...
That's cool. I like it.
In case he still, he's taken a vow sort of I'm not going to kill indiscriminately anymore.
We've established there's a lot of swords.
There's a lot of swords, and I like that you can use them for different things. You can use them as a stand-in for any sort of standard magical object. You can use them as
they can be like a MacGuffin. They can be a plot device. They can also be a killing device. They can say something about the character.
They can be a symbol of status, an elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
Or a symbol of wealth, like the shard blades. They can be whatever you need it to be. They can serve multiple purposes. I think most of the time people default to sword look cool, sword be cool, me kill things. And I think that's fine.
Which is fucking great.
Especially if you're playing an RPG. If you're doing a TTRPG, like I think my idea today really kind of leans into that. Is like, it's just cool to have awesome loot to hand out. That has a flair that people wouldn't be expecting. All right, Ethan. So why don't we just get into some Noodles descriptions here?
Tell me, what did you make today?
Eye of the Hurricane. What'd you make? What's your description here? Give me that tease.
You've seen it before. Tell me about this Eye of the Hurricane, Kyle.
This is a blade that isn't made of any real substance. You know what it's made of?
Hopes, dreams, wishes, fantasies.
No, like
rage.
Something that's real. Air.
Oh.
This is made entirely of wind and air.
Oh.
That is a funny, strange noise.
I like this.
It is
I'm intrigued.
It is a blade that is contained within some amount of space. It is not like, it is like the length of a normal sword, but you look at it and you can tell there's like a swirling gray matter there, and it's just wind moving around within the confines of this blade's space.
Sure.
But that wind is hurricane gusts.
Oh, shit.
In a constant swirl, stuck. And the handle is the eye of the hurricane that you get to grab onto where there is no wind.
Oh, shit.
And when you
So
slice
is the whole thing invisible?
No, you can see it's like a light to dark gray hue, because you can see the swirl. So you can see that there's a blade there.
Okay.
If you put it up against light, it would whatever.
You see like some particulate moving around.
Yeah, like you could see the particulars, or the particulate. Like you can see basically just like it's like a hurricane. You can see the rain cloud or whatever. It's all within there. So you can see there's something there.
Yeah.
But it isn't made of anything other than that. And kind of like the Dyson air dryers.
Oh, yeah.
Like that. Think about that to a degree.
Okay.
If you cut through something, it uses the force of a category 5 hurricane to cut through. Not like the physics of it are fundamentally different. If I slice your arm, it doesn't I don't nick it and it bleeds. I blow it off. It just goes flying. Depending on how,
so I can't reattach it.
Well, depending on how deep I cut it.
Okay.
Because if I just go for a small nick, blood is just going to splatter real far, because there's just 150-mile-an-hour wind just went and just whipped it. But if I swing hard, I will I'll have just that huge amount of force being applied.
Yeah.
And not necessarily it becomes almost like a blunt object, but it's so specifically narrow that it will slice through with that blunt force. I don't know what the amount of force is required to break through a bone, but I feel like if you have 150-mile-an-hour winds and the pressure that you could create, you could easily slice through that bone.
I would imagine.
Especially because of how concentrated it is. So then, you just get to use this as a sword, and you can use it when you say you're in a duel, and you just you get kind of caught off, and then you just jab somebody with the hilt.
Yeah.
And just huge, like knock the wind out of their chest. They go flying to the ground. Very
It's like they got hit by a bullet.
To a degree, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like if you don't use the blade, it won't cut. It will then just apply the force of that wind, but it doesn't apply it in the concentrated beam that you're getting on the blade, because the blade is basically narrowing in that wind.
Sure.
So it's this really narrow thing. If you hit them with the dull side of the blade, it will just be a big thump, and it's more of like a blunt weapon as opposed to a slashing weapon.
I like that, and that actually does get at something in real life. There are different swords that serve different purposes, right? I mean, rapiers are piercing weapons.
Yeah.
Sabers with the curved hilts slash. But then you also have these great swords like Zweihanders or Nodachi or
claymores.
Nodachi claymores that, yes, they have a cutting edge, but they actually function more like axes. They are more bludgeoning weapons than anything else.
Yeah.
Because they're designed to knock you off balance and take down horses and things like that.
Yeah.
They have a very different feel, and you use them very differently.
And this one gives you, like, you'll see in, like some fantasy, whatever, where there's a really talented fighter who's able to use a weapon so expertly to do fancy little tricks.
Yeah.
And to really, they can slap you in the side and then like cut you down here and then like quickly go around this way. They can use the second sword to do another thing or whatever. And there's like all this finesse.
Yeah.
And this is a weapon that basically gives that finessing character a really powerful tool to do it.
Yeah.
To say, great, you know how to do that with a regular sword. Now, what if we give you a sword that automatically can give you a boost with these little maneuvers and flares that you can do? Yeah. Oh, you want to twist your wrist and then flick out this way? Great. Well, that will actually send this person flying into the wall over there. You become somewhat of a god when you're wielding this weapon, and it's incredibly powerful. And I don't know what the downside is. There's probably, you got to bake one in. Maybe it's just because it's really hard to sheathe. Maybe it's really hard to get out. I don't know. I wasn't thinking about how to put a weakness on this. I was thinking
It's
about how
not
to
supposed to be a weakness.
It's supposed to be a real. This is like the +3 sword you give to a D&D character.
Yeah.
You give it to them
when they're level 20 kind of thing,
or when they're high level, where it's like this will, and it might be that it does like it actually, because of the way that it works, it actually does like a normal amount of damage, but it's the ability to like push people away and knock them down. That's where it becomes a more powerful weapon, and maybe it's like its damage is high, but it's not that high, and it's really just the additional like little maneuvers that make it special. I don't know.
I think, to me, it feels like something that is more akin to a lightsaber than anything else, because you have to be very careful, not just to
you don't want to knock yourself out. Like if you hit your own leg.
That's exactly. You have to be very careful not to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that is, if you wanted to use this for a D&D game, is you build in a mechanic where there is some degree of chance that you actually hurt yourself with the blade when you're using it.
Yeah.
So it builds it's high risk, high reward.
I feel like it should be almost that, because there's also the thinking through the mechanics of how you use it. If you slice, like say you're trying to sneak up and like sneak attack a guy, and you want to stealthily kill someone with this weapon, you can't really do that because their body's gonna have all this force. You got to really contain that and say, all right, I'm gonna slice his throat, but then his head's gonna maybe try to fly off. You also remove its ability to be useful in certain scenarios. Maybe if you are in a fight and someone's able to, like wrestle it, arm gets caught, and they're like wrestling it, and then you're trying to turn the blade onto the other, and they can turn it on you, and they just have to tap you with it, and you go flying backwards, and you kind of get knocked out.
Yeah, it's easy to turn against you.
Yes.
This is also something that cannot be used quietly. I think it carries maybe not the full deafening storm of a hurricane, but you can say that. I think as a result, though, I think anything within a certain radius around you, when it's unsheathed, I think any ranged attacks are made with some sort of penalty, and I think it's probably silenced in D&D mechanics, I think you can't cast spells because you can't use verbal components when you're
wielding it.
When you're wielding it and within a certain area around you, because the wind is it's too loud. It's almost taking your breath away.
I guess, but my thinking isn't. I get what you're getting. I think that could make sense, but the way that I was viewing it is very much that the wind is so contained by whatever this magical, like, containment field is that you don't hear it outside of that. Maybe it's like much like a Dyson blade, it's only along the edge that the sound is coming.
Yeah,
because that's where the wind is fully being expelled. So it's like a really so there is like it's a loud hiss when it's unsheathed, but
that's good.
But it's not a deafening storm.
Yeah.
And like around the edges, it's more so like that's like whenever the wind is fully unleashed, then it does that, and then everywhere else it's like almost like a thunderclap. So if you if you hit them with the hilt, it isn't expelling any wind there.
Yeah,
it's instead you kind of like you can hear like a thunderous boom.
Yeah,
and it just.
I like that. I think playing with the noise like that is fun.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. And the imagery, I'm thinking a lot about the Dyson and how a sheer wind can rip things apart and cut like that. It's very effective. It's a really cool. I'm trying to think of the type of character that would use it. I'm feeling a little monk. Like I'm feeling a little high level 4 elements monk.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Right?
I think that works well with a monk in D&D.
Yeah. Like just make it a short sword or something simple.
I think it works well with a ranger too.
Ranger could be fun too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and then you could also maybe find interesting like utility of using it. Of you have a ton of wind. Oh, you want to blow out a fire.
Yeah.
Here's a ton of wind.
Yeah.
Or you want to fan a flame. Here's some wind.
Could you blow open a door instead of having to unlock it or use the knock spell?
I don't know.
But these are mechanics that you can play around with. The idea of having a blade made out of something other than your traditional, a traditional physical thing is really cool. And it reminds me of the dagger in Baldur's Gate 3 that Orin uses, that is apparently made out of a not frozen but solidified drop of blood from the first person that the god of murder killed.
Oh, that's intense.
Which is intense, and I thought just kind of cool.
Yeah,
it's still that blood. It cuts just like a piece of metal.
Yeah,
but it is.
Yeah, it is made of blood.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that was what my brain was struggling to say. Yeah,
it gives me I think name vibes alone, and because I feel like I should give it a shout out. Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker.
What is that from?
The most famous weapon in all of World of Warcraft that has been spammed in chats in WoW for 20 years.
Get out of here!
It was like cool. It was like the first. When the game first came out, there were like 3. There were 2 legendary items. Technically, I think 3, and they were like really hard to get. And they it was legendary. They were like the oranges. They were like impossible to get, and there was one of them. And it was like super good at the time. And it's this huge blade that's like the size of a regular anybody who's wielding it. It's their same size, and it has like a little thunder sphere in the middle, or this like lightning sphere in the middle of it. It's very cool. But anyway, it's a good name, and it gets spammed in the chat.
That's fucking epic.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah. So anyway, shout out to WoW and every MMO, because they always have a lot of loot and a lot of cool named swords. But WoW has a lot of them.
It would be a great job to just have to sit there and come up with cool fantasy names for things.
If anybody is looking for people to do that, there's 2 of us here on this podcast that would happily dedicate our jobs to do that.
We do it in our free time. We would like to get paid for it as well, if that's an option.
Yeah, I think that mostly means become a game developer.
Correct.
That's a hard life.
Keep an
Shout out to all the game developers for doing a very difficult job.
We love you so much, and we appreciate you.
And anyway, so I think that's the end of my idea.
I think that's great. I love the Windblade.
All right, now let's go. It's Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade
of the Windseeker. I sincerely apologize. You have seen my sword before. You have seen my sword before.
Don't tell your wife.
Specifically, specifically to you, Kyle, in your nightmares, because this blade involves giant spiders.
Oh, I thought it was going to be an onion-based.
No, that would be pretty cool. Like in Pokemon, the Farfetch'd that uses a leek as a sword.
That's actually kind of...
Yeah, that was kind of
pretty
cool. I
cool.
like that. I thought about doing something with leaves. Like for the eco-terrorist druids, where you basically just use a super...
Gotta save your eco-terrorist druids ideas. That episode 100 is coming up.
Episode 100 is coming up. Keep an eye out. This involves giant spiders, though.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm sorry in advance.
To all of our...
So we have been, as a society, actually using real-life spider silk for production for ages.
Yeah.
And
it's clutch.
It is spider silk proportionally is stronger than Kevlar.
Yeah. It's also a major plot point in the new season of Andor.
Really?
Yeah. There's like the special silk from some planet starts with the G. I can't remember the name of it, but there's spiders there that like that's like their main commodity is they have this crazy valuable textile market because of this because of the silk. Anyway, yeah, but it is super strong. Walking through a spider web and be like, how can I not break this fucking web? Why is it still on me? Yeah,
that's what she said. Not even sorry. The idea that I had now is a little deflated because of the Andor thing. I swear to God, I hadn't even seen it yet.
No, but what? Yeah, you haven't seen it yet. So let's see what your idea is in a vacuum.
Yeah. So this is. I started thinking about cool things that are already existing in the world. There's this great Reddit post by this guy Leland and something that talked about using Prince Rupert glass. I forget what it is to have a glass made sword. I thought that was really cool. And I was like, all right, what are some other cool materials that already exist in the world that we can just sort of shape up a little bit? I didn't want to go the route again of like using, a dragon tooth or a dragon bone. Those are always cool, but they've sort of been done to death. The spider thing came to me though, because I was researching super hard materials and people were talking about Kevlar and they're like, oh, spider silk. And then I fell down that rabbit hole. And the thing about the spider silk that I thought could be cool is that it can only be made by a very specific type of spider. And most importantly, yes, it exists naturally as their web, but to make use of it, it has to go through this very extensive curing and treating process. Like you have to treat and tan leather in order to be cowhide in order to turn it into leather. Okay. So this type of sword is made by an order of monks that lives...
I believe they're called a monkey order.
The Monkly sounds weird. Monkey order? Are they monkey monks?
You literally said monkey order like 15 minutes ago.
I know. I'm making...
I don't understand. I give up.
Sorry. I was just ripping off of
I
you.
can't tell sometimes when you're being ADD.
I was just ripping off
and
of
when
you.
you're doing a bit, and I was like, that was such an ADD response. I was like, oh, he doesn't remember this conversation.
Oh
at
yeah,
all.
No. I was ripping off.
There was no recognition in your face.
Oh, sorry. No,
it was
commitment.
It was a dementia patient. It was just like you just didn't see me.
That's focus, man.
Yeah, I don't know.
Focus.
All right.
Yeah, it's a monkly order. Monkly. It feels weird to say.
Oh my God, this is like deja vu.
Because I'm setting it back up.
I know.
Monkly orders, Kyle.
Okay.
The order...
It sounds weird to say.
It does sound weird to say. There's an order of monks that basically have tamed these spiders, and they grow them, they care for them, they cultivate them, and just like monks that produce chartreuse, the liquor, this is what this monkly order produces, is this very treated, very hyper strong, hyper malleable steel silk. Let's just call it steel silk. And that might even be a real world term.
It might be a real.
I think it is. And now that I'm saying it, it sounds right. Kyle's going to look it up. Let's call it silver silk. By treating this, they can actually...
It's a Final Fantasy thing.
Oh, okay. By treating it, they can actually start weaving it together into cords and then use those cords to make sword blades out of them effectively. What's interesting though is because it's silk, it's already in this form. It doesn't really cut. so it's hard to make an edged weapon out of it. So it's a lot of rapiers. It's a lot of rapiers and a lot of daggers. Very good for piercing, but not and stabbing, but not so much for slashing. It's not really how they're used. So it requires a very specific type of fighting style in order to effectively use them. And I thought that these could be really interesting and very rare because the silk, number one, is very dangerous. It's not easy to deal with these spiders the way that these monks have spent their entire lives learning how to do. It requires, actually, I imagine, probably using the spider's own venom to treat. So I think that
absolutely that's how it goes.
I think that's it. There has to be some sort of reason why it can't just be immediately reproduced by the masses, right? It's very, very difficult. And I think the other added limit of requiring it to be a stabbing and a piercing, more fencing style approach to sword fighting instead of your slashing hacking types. I think those are all sufficient limitations to give you this very beautiful, very rare, very theoretically expensive, but intricately woven blade, basically. Because you're creating it out of silk. You're weaving it like you would almost on a loom to make this thing that is very bordering on unique, like true definition of unique.
So get back to why does it have to be they can just make like a fine point, basically. That's why it's
because silk is more it lends itself more to a tubular state.
So then all right, so I'm really
it's not impossible. I think it's maybe just I think it lends itself much more, so that's easier to use.
I'm thinking of like the masterwork that somebody is able to craft that is somehow like they're bending and weaving it in such a way where it's a constant like spiral where it has like all these little edges like all along the blade.
Almost like a serrated knife.
Or very much like a serrated knife.
Yeah.
Or almost like a morning star.
Yeah.
Having something where you can just have multiple points jutting off.
Sure.
Where they're able to, if you take it and you like put it around a ball and then you just start forming little outcroppings, little edges off of that. So you can make multiple points.
Yeah.
And then maybe actually just have a ball in the middle of that. Have like some sort of, a framework. Like build a frame and then put the silk around the frame to make something, because you can also then use this not just for swords, you can use this for other things to say, well,
sure, you could use it for spears, arrowheads.
Yeah, but I feel like the thing that makes it, spears is good.
Yeah.
I think this is really good as a spear.
This might be better as a spear, actually, yeah.
Because then it's super lightweight, it's super strong, and then the point, you just have the one point, and the rest of you're never going to break this spear. You're never going to shatter it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, and it would feel almost like the Beskar spear from The Mandalorian season 2, which was not intricate. It was just this incredibly beautiful mirror polished silver spear that came to a very simple point.
Yeah.
And this would be sort of functioning like that. Damn, I went for a sword and made a spear. Shit.
Or, okay, so
you could use it as a good rapier, but I agree. I think it works better as a spear.
Because then what if it's also just, I guess I get what you're saying in that it works better to have that fine point. But I think you could totally make it into a singular blade. But I think then it works well with like a one edged, like a katana blade, or like a pole arm, where you have like a glaive, where you have just one side has a point, or has an edge, and if you can, like, you could probably. Maybe that's like part of the craft is having the evenness that's required to like on, the weavers or whoever's making it to make it so thin at the edge and then coat it like crazy with the venom to really like seal it and keep it at that thinness that it can stay that way for forever.
I think the trick for that is that these are giant spiders, right? I know. I'm sorry.
They don't have to be giant. They could just be small.
They could.
In the Andor example, they're small.
They could. They could.
They could just make a huntsman's miter.
Regardless, maybe the thing that makes it able to cut, it's treated like, so as I'm making this up now. Okay. As the spider ages, the properties of its web change.
Okay.
So as it gets older, the older spiders are the ones where the web is incredibly strong. But it's the young spiders where the web is actually thin enough and sharp enough to actually be used like a wire cutter. Like if you've ever used clay or worked with clay, you know how you use the wire to cut through the clay. Your point before about walking into a nest, if the wire were theoretically like razor sharp enough, you could dissect yourself. Walking through that. But it's the young spiders
Ethan.
I know, but it's the young spiders that have that type of web.
Okay.
So you have to harvest from the younger spiders, which is immensely more difficult than the older spiders because they're little itty bitty baby spiders. And that's what makes it hard. That's what makes it so special to be able to have one of those things that's actually a cutting edge.
Interesting. I think you could play with this age question in a couple, like, because when you were saying that I had a completely different formulation in my head, I think you could reconfigure that in a bunch of ways to add in complications where you could have it where they are, the spiders can't live for very long, but the older they live, the more, the sharper it becomes because it becomes weaker and like starts to fray at the edges because their silk producing glands or whatever get weaker, and thus you actually need it to be, it's really rare to get because they die. So there's so few of them that can be kept alive, and there's some guy who's cracked the code and he's been able to keep his spiders alive forever, and thus
that's what makes these monks special, is because they don't farm them, they just care for them,
and then they keep producing it forever, so then they're able to make blades because of that. You know, like, you know, you could,
that's fun, that's cool.
You can play with it any which way, but I think that is using the physiology of the spiders themselves to inform this all is good.
Yeah. And that's why I think treating them in their own venom, we're not going for...
Treating them in their own venom, I think, is a really clutch element that it kind of seals the deal to make it that it is like, this is a high skill craft.
Yeah. This is not just working another material. Like,
yeah, because presumably this is pretty powerful venom that is dangerous to humans.
Yep.
And the spiders might not be aggressive, but if you don't know what you're doing,
real bad.
They'll attack. It's like being a beekeeper.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, like if you don't know what you're doing, the bees might be aggravated and might attack you. But if you can calm them, you're all good.
Yeah. And it feels like a very monkly. God, that still doesn't feel great. But
that feels weird. It's not a word.
It feels like it feels like the type of activity that a order of monks would get up to.
FYI, the word is monastic.
Monastic. Fuck.
I've just been letting you go on with monkly for this long. It's been fun. Yeah. God, you're so disappointed.
I hate you so much, and I so had it coming.
But it does feel like a thing that...
Monastic. Fuck.
It is a perfect thing for a monastic order to be doing.
Absolutely.
And we love me some...
We love me some orders.
we love us some monastic orders. So I think that's a good bowl of noodles right there.
Thanks.
All right, let's move on to lightning round.
Oh, is it my turn?
Let's move on to the frozen lasagna.
Frozen lasagna, yeah.
All right, ding.
A lightning sword.
Well, that feels like you heard Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Wind Waker, or of the Windwalker.
Oh, I heard lightning round and thought of lightning sword, actually. No, there is a winter tribe in a frozen area that has learned to carve swords out of some magical super hard ice that they have, but it has to go through a very rigorous process of forming this, just in the same way that you have to go through specialized or just in the same way that it takes effort to make perfectly clear ice. They have to find a way to use this ice like metal, and so they have to make it perfectly clear and then sculpt it and shape it, and then it can be used as a sword. But yeah, this is a tribe with magical ice blades, a winter tribe with magical ice blades.
Okay,
what have you got?
This might be done somewhere. I haven't.
There are so many swords. It's so hard.
Yeah. But this one feels more like it's been done somewhere that I should have seen.
Saber made of light.
It's like this caber that you X.
Caber that you X.
Which isn't even right. It's a caliber that you X.
It was still funny.
All right. So then this is very vampiric, where a vampire is able to essentially like have full control of their own blood, and they have like a constant, like a little cut at the edge of their wrist. And they're able to throw their own blood out and control it and form it into a blade.
Dope. Love it.
To fight.
10 out of 10.
It's very Castlevania, very like Dracula just makes weapons or makes blades out of his own blood.
And that was Inuyasha did something like that too.
Okay, there you go. And then afterwards, you just right back into yourself, and whatever blood he was able to get on the blade from the fight, then he's able to feed him.
Yeah, that's great.
He can acquire your blood with his blood and then be good.
10 out of 10.
Blood of my blood. All right, what's stuck for you?
I like your point about trying to play with the physiology of the spiders a bit more. It would be cool to be able to have an edged weapon made out of this stuff, and finding a way to do it is cool. I think, yes, you could certainly do it through craftsmanship. I like the idea of having to use the physiology of the spiders to do it, though. I think that thinking about that, because there's so much in media about using, I killed a dragon, I'm going to use a dragon fang for this. But in real life butchery, you have to be very careful with how you butcher things, right? Because it can go badly. So it's not that easy. And so I think, yes, these are, if you're going to do this, which is essentially the same thing, you're using a fantastical creature's body to make a weapon. That's been done for ages. Hercules had the Nemean lion shell, right?
Yeah.
But make it hard. Make it difficult.
Yeah.
That I think
make that a craft.
Yeah, make that a real craft. Don't just be like, I found dragon bone, I go forge it. It's like, no, this is hard fucking work.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what stuck to me, is the really like emphasizing the craftsmanship and the difficulty of making these things.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think that stuck for me as well. That was a big one, was the craftsmanship, the relationship with the spiders, and I don't think they have to be giant. I think it almost works better if they're not.
Yeah, I think that's a good edit.
If they're smaller, because it's easier to control,
but also harder to cultivate.
Harder to cultivate, and harder. They can easily hide from you. But if they can easily just fucking overrun you because they're giant spiders, good luck keeping Shelob in her cave.
Right.
So I feel like it works well on that scale. But so I really like that. I like the idea of I enjoyed the process of exploring what is the weapon it can be.
Yeah.
Like, what should it be, not a rapier, and playing with that I think was very satisfying.
Yeah. It was one of those things that felt more discovering rather than,
that's the best kind of world building, man.
Yeah.
And I really like the visuals of fighting with my weapon, with Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. When you're just like the idea of just thumping somebody with it and having them fly backwards, when you first, like whenever a character first gets it and then slices through somebody on a battlefield and their arm gets ripped off and goes flying.
Yeah.
And that, like, the shock value, that the intrigue of a weapon that fights different.
Yeah.
Kind of like how a lightsaber fights different. It's like, well, your metal is going to be cut through now. That when you aren't prepared for this battle. That's what this weapon kind of brings, and I always enjoy that visual spectacle.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a really good takeaway. And like the lightsaber, also having to be aware that you are just as likely to hurt yourself if you are not prepared to use this thing, if you are not completely aware of what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's a really fun part of it too.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's what stuck for us.
Let us know what stuck for you.
Emails in the show notes.
Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Shing shing.